Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Motor Vehicle and Transportation Subcommittee. We have 5 bills on our agenda today, and we will start off with Senate Bill 11. You may recall this, we had the hearing last week, and this bill would change the school zones. It was a lot about a concern that the senator had for where speed cameras were placed near school zones. I will say I understand where the senator's heart was and that it was about safety for children. There were a lot of concerns raised at the hearing. So let's just open it up for conversation. What do folks think? There's Jay. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you very much, Delegate. My concern is going to less than 500 feet in the school zone. I think that really puts a tremendous, an unreasonable amount of burden into the system. And I'm really opposed to the reduction in distance to the school zone area. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, appreciate your 2 cents. Thank you. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Delegate Morgan. I had concerns about this bill because I know in Montgomery County, the walk zone around schools can be up to a mile or maybe even a little bit more. And the reality is a lot of times on that walking commute for students, the most dangerous road is, in 90% of cases, not going to be the one that's immediately adjacent to the school. I know that in my own son's future elementary school, there are some dangerous crossings that are, near the beginning of his eventual journey, not near the end. And so I think this bill, unfortunately, just does not give the locals the discretion they need to put the speed cameras where they're really needed. And I think this is the kind of inquiry that's sort of case by case, is contextual. And so I'm worried that this bill kind of imposes a one-size-fits-all solution that's going to endanger some kids.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with my colleagues. I feel like this is the wrong sort of bill to be introducing this year, when I know at least my constituents and several of yours are clamoring for more safety on the roads. And I just feel like this sends the wrong message, and it actually will make people less safe. So yeah, I'm not comfortable with the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Delegate Ziegler.
Me too. Or me neither. Yeah, we're free, right?
I appreciate that. Thank you. Delegate Davis.
Well, since we're having a discussion, I mean, he did note a problem of the misuse of speed cameras. I mean, is there a way to make us all happy? Is there a way to address the misuse of the speed cameras? I get that one size fits all doesn't work. I get that. But we all have a problem with the misuse of speed cameras, and this committee has historically had a problem with the misuse of speed cameras. So I don't know. Since we're having discussion, is there something that would enable local jurisdictions to protect kids and deal with the misuse of it? I'm just offering that because we always try to make solutions.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Delegate Davis. The one thing I'll say about that, when I asked the senator in the hearing, because he said a lot of jurisdictions, and I said, okay, where? He only pointed to the city, and there were examples in other jurisdictions where the speed cameras were closer. So I'm somewhat hesitant to write a state law when we're only talking about a couple of cameras that he saw in the city. So I appreciate that. And if folks have suggestions along those lines, let's absolutely talk about them. But that was just one thing that occurred to me. Delegate Addison.
So I'm gonna say me too, but what he referenced to was a lot of Baltimore City. In the school where he talked about with the crossing guard, was hit right there in that section, we have started putting speed humps. And right at the next corner, there's a traffic light. And at the other corner is a traffic light. So it's not a long stretch that he's talking about. So he kept referencing Baltimore City, but we are trying to address that because around the schools, we are putting like the speed humps there. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Delegate Addison. Delegate Jacobs?
Thank you. If you recall in the hearing, I asked if they could put additional speed cameras in closer to the school, which would more or less fix the problem that he was trying to address without, and also it wouldn't affect the opposition where they talked about how much it would cost to move the cameras and recalibrate and all that. So I don't care for speed cameras at all, but there is a solution. They can put additional speed cameras closer to the school building, I think. And that would satisfy, I think, his issue. But I think that's the solution if they really wanted to address the cameras being closer to the school and also further out where kids are walking.
Got it. Thank you. Delegate Healy? And you're muted.
Thank you. Delegate Jacobs, I'm not sure. Were you talking about having additional speed cameras closer to the school rather than having the ones that are farther away removed?
Yes. That I asked that specific question in the hearing. Could
Okay.
you add additional cameras closer to the school so that if you had the cameras out a quarter mile or whatever it is, 1,500 feet, and you wanted them closer, the opposition was saying that it costs a lot of money to move them and have them recalibrated and, vote on all that. But they could, in theory, add additional cameras closer and have them further out and closer.
Yeah.
And that would resolve both issues. Now,
But that would be I'm sorry.
I'm not a lover of speed cameras by any means, but I'm just saying that I did ask that question and he said yes.
Okay.
That you could add additional cameras closer, unless Patrick's got something in the law there that says you can't.
No, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in addition to, I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to understand what you were saying, but my sentiments are pretty much in line with what just about everybody else has said, that the walking distances for a lot of the kids, even in my district, they have to cross major state highways, and the only way to get from their neighborhood to the school, to make sure that the traffic is slowing down, and it has changed behavior. So I've seen it happen in my district, and I would not want that not to be allowed, because it would definitely put some of the children who live farther away at risk. I'm thinking of one particular school that is the school itself is way back in a very, sparsely covered small town, small streets, but people have to cross a big road to get to that neighborhood where the school is. So I'm just really concerned about that, and I'm not sure what the answer is to solve the problem. If it's just in one location, it would be maybe something that could be worked out with the people at that local level, making a decision to make it, as Delegate Addison said, to do what they need to do to make it easier for people to know that they have to slow down in another way.
Thank you. Delegate Ziegler?
Yeah, I was just going to say the other part of the problem was that Senator Muse was saying that they were just using those speed cameras to raise revenue. And we, the committee has said that the idea with speed cameras is to use the revenue to fix the problem. So I wonder if there could be a local Baltimore City bill that would require speed humps at as Delegate Addison was saying, they do work, or some kind of traffic calming thing. You know, there are things we have to slow down and go around a little, you know, where they narrow the road and you have to go through some little straightening thing. If they use the money they get to do something like that, that might be, but I think it should be specific to the area that has the problem.
Thank you. Patrick, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just a couple things. One is to Delegate Ziegler's point. The money going to fix the problem is only for speed cameras at specific sites, not for the general local speed camera programs. The General Assembly has had 3 of those, one in Anne Arundel County, Indian Head Highway, and I-83 in Baltimore. And second, for the subcommittees, you know, if anyone asks you about this bill doesn't just apply to speed cameras in school zones, it applies to the school zones themselves. And as one of the testifiers pointed out, you know, you can lower speed limits to 15 miles an hour in a school zone. Well, if you lower and decrease the school zones like this bill does, then you decrease where they can lower the speed limit. So it has other effects like that.
Thank you. Okay, so is there a motion on the bill? Going once, going twice, bill is unfavorable in committee. Okay. Moving on to SB 249. This bill would put cannabis and alcohol education in the driver's education. We do have a letter from MDOT that says currently Unit 9 of the driver's education curriculum addresses impaired driving, including driving while under the effects of cannabis. This was, I think, before JPR added or alcohol. So we do know that they do it already. Any questions, comments, discussion on this bill? Okay. Is there a motion on the bill? Going once, going twice.
I'll move favorable, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
I just think even if they're already doing it, you know, I think a senator was saying that you put it in statute, at least it's codified. So if, you know, the agency in the future wanted, I can't imagine why you would ever want to take it out, but just as it doesn't seem like maybe it's doing a whole lot in statute, at the same time, I can't imagine it would hurt to have this in statute given the legalization of cannabis. So I'll move favorable.
Okay, and there was a second, I believe. Any discussion? Patrick, I have a question for you. Have we put in statute anything on driver's ed before?
I know that we've had bills to that effect. I don't think any of them have passed.
Okay, so will we be
I'm
setting,
looking at the statute now, and I don't see that any of them have passed, but we definitely have had those bills before.
so we've had bills to add and we have not passed them before.
Right.
Okay. So is there any concern about setting any precedent about adding things to the driver's ed? Yes, Delegate Ziegler.
Can I just check maybe with Patrick? Would we potentially be doing any harm by codifying it and, you know, adding, since we did pass cannabis? I mean, I take Delegate Stewart's point. But would we be doing it or any harm? Is there any can of worms we're opening up?
In terms of legally, I don't see any can of worms here.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Oh,
Delegate
sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
So
Sorry, Delegate Guyton. Patrick, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Chairman Love raised the point of setting a precedent, but that's not a legal
Right.
concern.
Sure. And that's, I was going to piggyback on that as well. Coming off of education and Board of Education, I can tell you that prescribing specific curricular issues into either school curriculum or something like this, which is basically very similar, it does open, if not a legal can of worms, man, it does open a legislative can of worms like you've never seen. You know, and I also think that if we decide that we have to put everything in statute, and that's how they begin interpreting how they're developing their curriculum, it may be likely that they have the autonomy to add things that might need to be added without statute. I think it's just something I'm uncomfortable with coming from a curricular background that is problematic if we don't need it.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Delegate Davis?
You know, I really am not bought on either side, but I do want to point out that our education regarding cannabis and the legalization and what you can and can't do, it falls short. Legislature, I mean, it goes to Delegate Stewart's point, is that we're falling short on education. I think it will be an opportunity to let young people know.
Okay. April, do you have anything that you would like to add from NVA's perspective? I know you filed information only, but is there anything you want to add here?
Sorry, it took a second to get loaded. No, we have nothing to add. We already do it. We have the National Highway Safety unit under us. So we make sure that we are educating these kids, including my son. He just went through driving school. So I was like, make sure you're paying attention. We want to make sure that, especially with, the bills coming up this year with the legalization of cannabis, that it is on there. So we always review the education that we are teaching and making sure that they are up to the standards across the country.
Thank you. Delegate Davis?
I've got the answer. So since we're afraid of legislating it and we have a friendly government now, April, are you opposed to just doing it, including it as part of your education program?
We are not opposed because we were already doing it in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we also don't oppose it being in statute either. So we welcome whatever the legislator would like to do.
Thank you. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So April, while we have you here, and I really could go either way on this, I'm not really striding on either side, but I don't really see any harm of codifying it, but at the same time, my question for you, April, is would MVA already be planning, number one, would MVA already be planning to update the training that you already do in the aftermath of us passing legal cannabis? It seems like maybe the rules or the knowledge would be a little bit different. And number two, would the fact that we are setting a precedent that this would seemingly be the first time it's in statute, would that possibly nudge the MVA in the direction of sort of making sure that the training is even more robust? In other words, number one, is there a plan to update it based on the law we passed about cannabis? Number two, is there a possibility that by codifying it, it sort of adds a little bit of extra oomph for the agency's perspective of sort of knowing that this is something that the legislature cares a lot about?
So to answer your first question, we are already researching if there's any extra information in regards to passing the cannabis. We've been in contact with different states. We lead the charge on highway safety. So we're always looking for that new information to teach these, anyone that takes driver's ed. So we take that very seriously. And if any information is added to our curriculum, it's just to educate anyway that needs to be educated. And the second part of that, we're not taking it any more seriously because we already take it extremely serious. We had the testing for the alcohol. We have the circumstances around what happens when you are pulled over. What are the consequences when you do get charged with this, and if you are found guilty? That piece we haven't solidified with the cannabis. So we are going through as soon as the legislator, what does that look like? And we will add that to our curriculum, but we want to stay in communication with everyone to make sure our levels are as high as possible to be able to add the information to our curriculum.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Delegate Guyton?
Thank you. Last thing, I think the 2 points that I want to make is, first of all, at some level, I think, especially since we now have, a new governor, we need to trust our departments to do what they say they are doing and to do it well. I don't like to ever pass legislation to force a department to do something unless there is a problem to fix. And it does not sound like there's a problem to fix. My own 3 boys have gone through driver's education not too long ago, and they certainly had a lot of information on this issue. And then the second point is a question for Patrick. I mean, is this a good use of state money to pass laws and have them printed? How much does it cost to actually pass a law that we don't need to pass?
Well, I think most of that money has already been spent, but I used to have the number. I want to say it's like $5,000-$10,000, something like that.
That's what I've heard too. Is it worth it to put in something in code that is already happening? That's my question to my colleagues.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Any further discussion? Yes, Delegate Healy.
I just want to respond to Delegate Guyton because I think anybody could put a bill in anytime on any subject and it always costs the same amount. So and if we pass this, then this bill won't keep coming back every year. And that's another way of looking at it. But I'm also, I could go either way on this as well. I see the value both ways. And so I'm kind of just waiting to see what everybody else says.
All right, well, moment of truth is here. So there is a favorable motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay. All those opposed? All right, the bill fails. But not, I want to encapsulate this discussion. We all agree this is important. We all believe in this education. We are happy it is currently being done. We are happy that MVA is working on it to the highest standards. So it's not that we don't believe in it, but that if I can speak from the conversation that I heard, that it's already being done. So if I misstated anything, please correct me. Okay, moving to SB 545. This is towing or removal of vehicles reclamation hours. Currently, we have 2 different standards. Maryland State Police are only required to make vehicles available for reclamation Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday and Sunday 9 a.m. to noon. Private towers are required 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this would move it to a minimum of 6 a.m. to 12 midnight, 7 days a week. Is there any discussion on the bill? No. Okay. Is there a motion? Yes, Delegate Morgan.
I'm slowing my finger. The question I got is sort of crazy. So you're out, your car gets towed at 11 o'clock at night. You get back to your car at 1 in the morning. What do you do till 6 in the morning?
A good question. Don't have an answer. Thank you.
That's the problem I got with the bill.
Yeah. Delegate Addison?
So my question is, if they're only open a certain time, why do they have posted signs 24 hours, 7 days a week, if they're not going to be there?
Because right now they're required to be there under state law, so they would have to change their signs.
They have to change their signs. Okay. Yeah. Because if I get told at 11, I want to get my car I have a problem with the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Delegate Stewart?
So we heard this bill a couple years ago. I've always been actually really fascinated by it because I think I voted for it. I think we actually passed it unanimously in the House. and in the committee in 2021. It's probably one of the only times I voted against like the Office of the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division on any bill. And I've always found it fascinating because I could sort of I see kind of both sides of this. I see this on the one hand, how it could be harmful for consumer protection. On the other hand, I think the reason that we voted unanimously, honestly, one of the big reasons we voted unanimously 2 years ago, I know speaking personally, one of the reasons I voted for the bill and kind of held my nose a little bit in doing so, is that we heard 2 years ago, not this time because it was we didn't get the House bill this time, but we heard some extremely compelling, extremely visceral testimony 2 years ago on this bill, probably some of the most compelling testimony I've ever heard on a hearing where the operators themselves came before us. And if I remember correctly, showed us some of the injuries they've sustained from these late at night, early evening hours. I mean, you're talking about a harrowing job where you've got angry folks who got their cars towed. They parked in an illegal spot, despite obvious warnings to the contrary. A lot of times they're under the influence of some sort of substance and they're angry. They then confront these operators who are not earning nearly enough money to deal with these violent interactions. So to me, I ended up weighing the sort of health and safety of these working class folks just trying to earn a living slightly over the convenience of consumers who have violated the law, but are not totally unsympathetic. But I could totally see where other people come out differently. And in fact, if you look at the vote list in the Senate on this bill, it is a wacky coalition of people who probably will not vote together in both parties the whole rest of the session that we're voting together both yay and nay on this bill. So I think it's a complicated subject, much more complicated than the unanimous vote 2 years ago might indicate. But my answer to the question of what do you do if you get your car cut at 2 a.m. is, well, listen, there's a lot of times that people break the law and are thereafter inconvenienced. We could tick off all the things. Well, what if you do 95 and a 55 and your car gets impounded? Then you're stuck on the side of the road. Well, that's pretty inconvenient. You've got to figure out something to do. But it's not like these people are doing something unknowingly. They're knowingly breaking the law. These notices are usually extremely prominent. And if they're not, that's a separate issue. But for the most part, people they're bringing their vehicle to a location, they're parking, and then, yeah, they may have to be inconvenienced by a handful of hours. And so what are they going to do? Well, they're going to do exactly what they would do if they got towed by a Maryland State Police Authority, who already have more limited hours than the hours contemplated under this bill. And I've never heard from a constituent, and we've never heard in the committee that folks have a huge problem about, getting a cab home or waiting around until the Maryland State Police open up. And if people are inconvenienced by that, I see the problem. I feel for them, but at the same time, I remember back to those knife scars that we saw 2 years ago. And I slightly outweigh the health and safety of just kind of working average Joes and Jane in Maryland over the convenience of people that are violating the parking laws.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Delegate Davis?
Madam Chair, I want to first thank you for just the ability to just discuss it, to everybody just throw in their opinion and have some, not debate, but discussion. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So where am I? When I heard the bill, I wanted to come down. Well, I want always come down on the side of consumer protection. You guys know I came from judiciary, and we can't make laws or get rid of laws based on crime. I mean, we really can't. We got to deal with crime in its own little bucket. That's my feeling. But I wanted to ask a question as to whether, and you guys would know in ENT, whether there's ever been like a comprehensive task force or study on the whole towing thing. Has there been anything on there yet?
Yes.
Or lately? When was the last time?
About 10, 15 years ago.
Maybe time for another. And that's where I am. I would support the bill, but I think I've heard lots of stories on the other side, and I think I'd like to address them comprehensively. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Addison, since you spoke a moment ago, I'm going to jump over to you to Delegate Ziegler, and then I'm going to come back to you. Delegate Ziegler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a couple of things to say. One is I'm flashing back to being a young woman living in a city, working swing shifts in a place where it's really hard to park. And knowingly making a decision to park illegally because it was less scary than what could potentially happen to you walking alone on the street late at night. And that is a very real thing. At the same time, I am very disturbed by the difference between the state police and these private companies. And I can't, in good conscience, say that we should have a job where you should just expect knife wounds, where that's like a, reasonably common thing that just can happen. So I think I'm going to come down in favor of the bill, but very reluctantly. And I appreciate Delegate Davis's call for a more comprehensive look at the situation.
Thank you. Delegate Addison?
So again, I'm not for this bill. I agree with Delegate Davis. And I also wanted to say, if it's so unsafe if it's so unsafe, why are they towing at night? It will be unsafe for both of us. It will be unsafe for the tow driver, and it will be unsafe for me as well. And I think we need to put this in a study. I really do, because I don't like the towing bill. I have seen where tow truck drivers just drive around, and they see somewhere and they'll just tow your car. I've been there before, so I know that that's their way of making their money, their earnings. But everybody, if I might have went into a restaurant 5 minutes and the sign says 8 o'clock, I got there at 8 o'clock or 7:59, 8 o'clock, they're towing my car. I'm just not a fan of this bill, because living in Baltimore City, and I don't want to say anything wrong about Baltimore City, but we know of the crime that's in Baltimore City. So if it's unsafe for the tow drivers, it's going to be unsafe for me. Why are they towing that time of night? That's just me.
Thank you, Delegate.
I have a lot of problems with the bill, with tow truck drivers.
Thank you. Delegate Healy?
Yeah, I see both sides, but I was here a couple years ago and voted with everybody else in favor of this bill because the testimony was very, very, it had a great effect. And I think that I really will associate with Delegate Stewart. I think that it's not perfect. I agree that we probably do need to get a study done. If we haven't done one in 10 or 15 years, it's probably time to look at the whole thing comprehensively again. So I would even be not, okay with putting a sunset on this and let us have a study in a few years, in a couple years after we see how this works. So that's where I stand. I'll vote for the bill, but I'd be happy to I would be willing to support a sunset as well.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay. Yes, Delegate Healy, did your hand go back up or is it still? Okay, great. So do we have a motion on the bill?
Move favorable.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All opposed? Okay. The bill passes. Thank you all for that discussion. I love you guys. You're great.
What was the vote?
The vote, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-3, right? Are we 8, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9? Is that right? I saw 3 opposed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 705. This was a department bill by The Department of Transportation, this bill is to make it easier for a surviving spouse to who is not originally on their certificate of title to get a certificate of title without having to pay. Any discussion on that? Thank you. Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, bill passes unanimously.
All right, Madam
Moving
Chair.
to Senate Bill
Madam Chair.
709, this is, I'm sorry?
Just want to say that this bill has a $500,000 fiscal note, so we'll have to run it by appropriations.
Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 709, commercial driver's licenses and instruction permit. This is also a departmental bill. This one has two portions of it. It lengthens the amount of time for a commercial learner's permit from 18, is it, now I've lost it, from however long it was.
180 days.
I'm sorry?
80 days to a year.
Thank you. I knew there was an 18 there. So 180 days to a year. And there's some testimony talking about how it actually is better for them. They need more time in order to practice and learn under a mentor and then get their commercial driver's license. And then it would also allow MVA to accept a Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration medical examiner certificate as proof of meeting vision standards for CDL license renewal. Any discussion?
Move favorable.
Okay, is there a second? Delegate Morgan seconds. Delegate Guyton, I see your hand up.
Hi, I'm sorry, it's not on the bill. It's actually because everyone keeps cutting out. I know a few of us have turned off our video to get better reception, particularly bad today. I don't know if others, so you're all frozen to me right now, so I don't know if I'm frozen, but I don't know if others might do the same to see if we could hear a little bit better.
Sure. Okay. Good news, this is our last bill. So we have a motion and a second on this bill. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Great. Anybody opposed?
Aye. Sorry, I turned up my video.
Okay, and
Was
Madam
that
Chair,
What's that?
I just want to say again, this one has a $350,000 fiscal note, so we'll have to get appropriations approval too. I'll put both of those in today.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, we are done. Anything for the good of the order? All right. Thank you all very much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
I'll get it tomorrow. Okay, thank you.